Dr. Shahira Abdullah.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I would like to express my support for the action plans proposed in the White Paper on Singapore women's development. In my opinion, the policy and legislative changes that will be implemented have the ability to catalyze a mindset change in the whole community on how gender roles are perceived in today's context. I would like to focus my speech on the support for women in the workforce. To do so, we can firstly look at the gender pay gap. Both the adjusted and adjusted measures of gender pay gap are used for policy making. Based on a study conducted by MOM and NUS in 2020, it was found that there was an adjusted gender pay gap of 4.3%, which has shown a marked improvement, though it can still be improved. The gender pay gap was attributed to various factors. Women frequently play the primary role of a caregiver, be it to their children, their elderly, as well as those with special needs. This may have impacted their time and experience at work, leading to delays in career progression and earnings. However, there was barely any change in the unadjusted gender pay gap between 2002 to 2018, with a differential of 16% between the two genders. This is significant and can be explained by occupational segregation. Examples include the effect of occupational choices, which may be dictated by women's multiple responsibilities. The labour force participation rate in 2020 also shows further evidence of the motherhood penalty, in which the gap widens particularly when women reach their peak childbearing or childcaring ages. So what can be done to narrow this gap? I am very heartened that the White Paper has taken a multi-pronged approach to tackle this. Firstly, gender discrimination and implicit biases still persist in the workplace, intended or unintended. For example, minority women may have to deal with biases due to gender as well as race. In June 2021, a woman applying for a preschool teacher job was allegedly asked to remove her hijab at work. Additionally, whether a woman decides to get married or start a family should not be asked in interviews or play a part in whether job opportunities are offered. It is disheartening that we are now in the 21st century and yet women are still having to contend with questions on their childbearing motivations at a workplace and upon being hired. Therefore, I very welcome that we will be enshrining the tripartite guidelines on fair employment practices in law. Doing so will afford better protection to women who are victims of discrimination and prevent retaliation against those who whistleblow. In particular, I would also like to ask if specific legislation and policies will be introduced for women going on maternity leave. If there are cases in which a pregnant mother has to go on maternity leave, she should not be automatically given a lower band by default during her subsequent appraisal simply by virtue of taking what is statutorily mandated leave. Guidelines should be available for the employer to objectively evaluate her performance and for the employee herself to be able to fulfill them reasonably. These can help to address unequal pay or promotion, which can slow down further career progression down the road. Additionally, what provisions or measures can be introduced that would ensure women are not discouraged from taking their statutorily mandated maternity leave at risk of penalty to their career progression? While the White Paper champions autonomy of choice for women, I'm concerned that women may be presented with a false choice and come under increased pressure to view their recovery during the duration of their maternity leave as optional, especially for women who aspire to hold leadership positions in future. Thus, they may either opt not to take the full duration of their maternity leave or choose to continue working throughout the duration of their leave. Anecdotally as well, it seems a handful of employers may encourage women to work throughout their maternity or seek to postpone or do away with their time with the promise that doing so will lead to greater career progressions. I think a stronger message needs to be sent that maternity is not an optional leave, but one statutorily protected because Parliament recognises there is a need for women to recover from the procedures and many bodily changes introduced by pregnancy and labour. There is a greater social good being encouraged by preserving the leave for women and ensuring that it is observed. Secondly, I'm also glad to see the introduction of the new tripartite guidelines on flexible work arrangements by 2024, which requires employers to consider employees' flexi work requests fairly and properly. There are many ways FWAs can be implemented, whether flexi place, flexi time, or flexi load. Being able to do so would allow employers to adopt the best practices to manage their workforce, while at the same time allowing them to tap on talents that they may not have been able to traditionally. This is also a major step forward to weaken gender norms. Instead of work structures that reward employees for pulling more hours at work, a transition to one which is supportive of a family-friendly work culture would encourage both parents to balance work and family commitments. However, such benefits should not be solely used by women, as the perceived cost of hiring them will increase. According to MSF, only 55% of fathers used up their paternity leave. This was mainly due to workplace support. Fathers are worried that it might affect their career prospects, and employers also have to ensure that colleagues are willing to cover the father's duties in their absence. I understand that the white paper will be tackling this aspect in Action Plan 4. Therefore, may I ask whether there are similar upcoming plans to ensure increased utilization of FWAs, not by women, but by men as well? In a similar vein, an NUS study in 2021 showed that men with lower incomes were less likely to utilize their paternity leave. This was especially prominent in those involved in manual labour. Hence, I suggest for provisions to be made to allow for some amount of paternity leave to be made compulsory. This will be a strong signal to the community regarding the importance of shared gender responsibilities as equal partners, as well as towards enhancing the support of women in low-income families as well. Thirdly, employers or institutions who are able to adopt such family-friendly practices should be rewarded for their commitment to gender equality in the workplace. These efforts are not easy to adopt, especially since it also relies on the mindset change and support of society to make it work. This is also in line with the government's moves to encourage marriage and parenthood to boost the total fertility rate. Lastly, it is evident that everyone plays a part in the progress of women's development, which is why I believe mindset change is the most critical step in this whole endeavour of policy, legislative and structural changes. It is reflected in the choices that we make every day. As fathers, when we make an effort to share the mental load and burden of household responsibilities, as parents and educators, when we decide what kind of examples we set with our behaviour, as employers and colleagues, when we show understanding to fellow parents at work, or as consumers, where we take a stand to not consume sexist content. Only with everyone taking a conscious step and working hand in hand will our efforts bear fruit much faster with far-reaching effects. With that, Madam Deputy Speaker, I support this motion.